Welcome back, everyone, to An Ordinary Search for Truth. My name is Nate, and I know it's been a little while since I've posted. I did take a pretty extended break for the holidays, and not just to spend time with family, but also to do even more introspection into myself and contemplation about the nature of reality, which is what I'm all about. So today I wanted to do a special video. Special because I'm going to be trying to communicate a very, very deep understanding that I've come to, a realization about myself and about reality. Definitely buckle up for this one. It might be a little bit longer than what you're used to, but I have spent a lot of time trying to put together an outline for this particular subject. And I've recorded this video at least 6 times, trying to communicate this understanding in words. It's very difficult to do, and I've spent a lot of time refining my outline and how to present this and how to go about it. So, what you're seeing today is the result of many weeks of work, and hopefully, I can communicate what I'm trying to communicate to you. Ultimately, you'll be meeting me on your own terms, in your own way, and finding meaning in this based on your own depth of understanding about yourself and about reality. So I hope you enjoy and that this helps you cultivate even greater understanding about your fundamental nature and the nature of all things. So the question that we're going to be exploring today is, do I have free will? Now, obviously, this is a heavy question that's been debated by philosophers and some of the greatest minds of all time over the past many, many hundred years. And the reason that there's so much debate about this is because there's so much debate about what we fundamentally are, the nature of ourself, and the nature of will. So we're going to be exploring both of these in depth. And what I've had to do with this subject is address it from two different levels. Because what's going on is there's actually two selves involved when using the term I. Do I have free will? What is this I that we're referring to? So we're going to have to talk about that. And then secondly, what is will? In particular, free will. What does that even mean? What are we really asking when we ask the question, do I have free will? So without further ado, let's get into it. There are many different ways to think about the term will. There's different facets of this. We could use several different terms. I'll list a few of them for you now. We could use intention, desire, action, choice, control, responsibility. All of these are intertwined with the meaning of will. I'm going to share with you my view on this. For will to exist, it implies a certain subjectivity. For there to be will, there must be a subject, a self, a being. And will always begins with an intention, a certain primordial drive toward action. Will is limited to a self's ability to manifest that intention in reality. So, under this understanding, free will means that when a certain subject or a self has an intention, that its intention is not being created or compelled by anything outside or other than that self. And that self's ability to manifest that intention fully is not limited or constrained by anything outside of or other than its self. Are you still with me? I know that sounded pretty technical. What that's basically saying is that for free will to be, when a self has an intention and a desire to manifest that intention, there is nothing outside of or other than that self that is constraining or compelling that self to have that intention or manifest it. So, as I said before, there's two levels to this because there exists within you two selves. The self that you are and always have been and always will be, your fundamental or your core self, and the self that you believe yourself to be, or your ego self. Now, if you've watched my past content, then you already have a good idea about the nature of these two selves. I've explored this very deeply. You'll know that one is real and one is an illusion. One is infinite and unlimited, and one is finite and limited. If you don't know what I'm talking about or you're very confused by this, then please pause this video and go and watch my playlist called Searching for Absolute Truth. And for even more depth, I would also go and watch my playlist called A Course in Awareness, where I really flesh out this idea. It's very fundamental to understanding what I'm about to talk about here in regards to free will. So if you're still watching at this point, I'm going to assume that you do have a foundational understanding regarding your true essence as infinite consciousness and the nature of your ego self. And if it's just conceptual right now, that's okay. If you haven't really gone into experiencing this directly, that's okay. I can work with a conceptual understanding for the time being. So let's apply what I've previously shared as my view on will or free will to these two different aspects of our being. In regards to the ego, or that self that most of us consider ourselves to be, any self cannot have a will greater than what it essentially is, which means that a limited self will always have a limited will. If you believe that you are, or if you take yourself to be this particular body, mind, or this particular person or individual, then your will always be limited to your capacities as this, or the capacities of this body mind. This particular body cannot spontaneously fly, so you cannot will yourself to fly because you are limited to this particular body that cannot fly spontaneously. And I could go on and on with examples like this. Previously, I described free will as a self whose intention and ability to manifest that intention is not constrained or compelled by anything other than or outside of that self. So a limited self could have at best a limited form of free will, but never total or unlimited free will in the most absolute sense of the word. This should be pretty apparent that as a limited self, we will only ever have a limited will. A physical body could only will that which is within the bounds of physics or a physical reality. A finite mind can only ever will that which is within the bounds of the finite. So the key point that I want you to take from this is that in regards to free will, your freedom of will always be bound by the limits of what you take yourself to be. Now that's very important, so I'm going to say it again. Your freedom of will always be bound by the limits of what you take yourself to be. Which brings us to applying this understanding of will to the other aspect of our being, the infinite consciousness aspect, or the unlimited self, the part of us that is reality itself, our fundamental essence. As I said before, any self cannot have a will greater than what it essentially is. So, whether you've experienced yourself as infinite reality or not, let's explore what such a self's will would look like. Even if you have not had a direct experience of what you fundamentally are, that's okay. Let's just hypothesize. Let's say that an infinite or unlimited self existed. What would its will be like? Well, very simply, an unlimited self would have unlimited will. After all, if there was an infinite self, there could be nothing outside of it or other than it to impose any kind of constraint or limits or compulsion to that self's will. We could call such a self God. We could also call it reality. We could call it existence or being or what is. It would be all encompassing and all powerful, which would mean that its will would also be all encompassing and all powerful. Its every intention would be immediately made manifest. Its will would be completely free. It would have absolute free will. Now, an interesting question to ask at this point would be if such a self existed that had such a will, then what would it will? It's a good question to ask. Well, if it was truly infinite in every sense of the word, then it would will absolutely everything. Anything that could be willed would be. Every single possibility of intention and resulting manifestation would be explored eternally. I'm going to pause a bit to let that sink in because that's really profound. I mean, obviously, we're still operating in the hypothetical, but how mind blowing is that? If there was an infinite self with infinite will, it would will absolutely everything. Like, holy shit, that's that's insane. That's incomprehensible, really. Another good question to ask might be, could this infinite self with infinite will itself to not be what it is? Or could this infinite self will itself to be finite? Could it, in its all powerful, limitless will, limit its will? Could it explore that possibility within itself? Well, the answer is yes. It's truly unlimited. It's truly infinite. But the only way that it could limit its will or become finite is by tricking itself into believing that it is that. It could only do this by tricking itself into believing that it is not, in fact, infinite, but instead finite. Because, like I said before, a self's freedom of will always be bound by the limits of what it takes itself to be. So if the infinite self could convince itself in some way that it is not in fact infinite, but that it is finite, its infinite will would then collapse into the illusion of a finite will. Because its will would be so all powerful and unlimited, it would be able to successfully create an illusion so believable that it could, for a time, trick itself into believing that it is a limited self and that it is constrained to having a limited sense of will. And could it be possible that this is, in fact, exactly what is going on with you and with me right now? Is that possible? Just for a moment, open yourself up to the possibility that this could be what's happening. I'm not saying believe it. I'm not saying to take my words as absolutely true. I'm just asking you to open your mind to the possibility. Explore this with me. Be open to it. What if what we fundamentally are is not actually this limited self that we believe that we are with limited will? But in reality, we are that one infinite self exploring a possibility of limitation within itself. I mean, what a trip, right? What if that's what's going on? That's pretty far out. The only way to know for sure would be to deeply inquire into the nature of what we are and see if fundamentally we are more than what we believe ourselves to be. See if what we are is anything more than what we've been taught that we are. But what would this really mean for us? I mean, if we did discover that we are actually this infinite self with infinite will that could manifest any intention with absolute freedom, then couldn't we, with simply the very power of our will ourselves $1 million or world peace, an end to human suffering? Couldn't we do this? Well, there's a catch. If we truly discovered that we are infinite reality with infinite will, then we would simultaneously discover that what we are always experiencing in every moment and what we have always ever experienced is already this infinite will in action. Everything that exists only exists because it is being willed into existence by existence itself or by reality itself. Or we could put this into religious terms if we want and say that everything that is because God wills it. The fact that you don't have $1 million, that there isn't world peace, that humans suffer, all of this is a possibility that infinite reality is exploring within itself and literally is being willed into existence. This, all of this, your entire experience, including the experience of the limited self that you believe yourself to be, is literally what infinite will looks like. Take a moment to let that sink in. All of this, your entire experience, including your experience of being you, this individual self, all of it is literally what infinite will looks like. This is what infinite reality is willing. This is what it's doing. But as long as you continue to allow this incredibly powerful illusion to trick you into believing that you are anything other than infinite reality, then you will only ever experience a limited sense of self and a limited experience of will. If you look deeply into yourself, into your fundamental nature, then there's a chance that you might discover that you are not, in fact, that limited self that you've always taken yourself to be. And if you aren't a limited self with a limited will, then you must be an unlimited self with an unlimited will. If you are not, in fact, separate from existence or separate from reality, then you must be existence itself. You must be reality itself. And what it means to truly know yourself as this is to wake up to the fact that everything that exists, everything that is real, is what existence or reality is literally willing into being. It isn't making a mistake. You, your fundamental self, are not making a mistake. Your will is perfection. Your will is love. A love of all possibilities that could possibly exist within the infinite. It is a love of yourself as the infinite. So, to answer our question, do I have free will? You do have free will. When you know yourself as that which is truly fundamentally free, when you know yourself as that which is not limited, and your will is already manifest. Look, look, there it is. Here it is. All of this, your entire experience, is what absolute free will looks like. All of this is what absolute free will looks and sounds and tastes and feels like. Isn't it beautiful? Isn't it absolutely miraculous? So with that, I'll conclude this video. Thank you so much for watching and for supporting what I'm doing here on my channel. I am so, so, so grateful for all of you that watch my content and leave comments and are subscribed and like my videos, all of that. I'm so eternally grateful for you. And you help keep me motivated to keep this up. And so, a heartfelt thanks to you. If you do enjoy what I'm doing, feel free to like the video. And if you're not already subscribed, hit subscribe so you can be notified for all of my future videos as they're released. I have some amazing content coming up that you won't want to miss. And with that, thank you again, and I will see you in the next one. Don't worry, I've got a lot more content for you to enjoy. Click the link to the right to see a video that goes hand in hand with what you just watched. On the left is a playlist I recommend you check out. And down below, you can see my latest video release. Your support means the world to me, so thank you.